Well, hello, lovely listeners. Welcome, viewers. Well, today we have the returning champion, Victoria Rixon. And Victoria is fresh from victory, let me tell you. So I'm excited. I know she's already done a podcast. She's done one before me, which I'm a bit pissed off about, but never mind. It is what it is. But I'll have her on again because she's taken them all on people. So before we go any further, don't forget to keep liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing. It really helps this channel to grow. It really helps me to just keep reaching out to amazing people like Victoria that are taking on the system and having these little wins along the way. Because my week's not been as great as Victoria's. I'm not going to get into that, but this is all about Victoria. So welcome again, Victoria. It's amazing to have you back again.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here again.
So, Victoria, people will know you were the whistleblower, are the whistleblower, midwife, and have you been doing talks around the country about that, and you've been doing podcasts. But today we're talking about data protection. We're talking about this exciting subject called GDPR. And we're talking about taking on the scumbags that think that they can basically come and take our money without any consent. So, Victoria, this week or last week, should I say, you were in court, were you not?
Yes, I was on
A-
Friday, the 23rd of May.
And who were you in court with?
Um, Act credit management with a defendant, but I also had a huge amount of abundance behind me.
So you basically took them to court. And why did you take them to court?
I took them to court because they contacted me on the 11th of June 2024 on my email and by sending me a letter to my home address and a text message. And I'd never heard of them. So I started doing some digging. Now, this one's a little bit different because it was against my NHS hospital,
Right. So these are
who,
the people you used to work for.
yes, so I used to work at NHS Hospital, University Hospitals Plymouth Trust, which is known as Derriford Hospital. And I worked there and I had a work car under my salary sacrifice scheme. So it would, in my variation of contract, it states in the 4 pages that the balance and the monthly amount is deducted from my net salary. So I obviously got this letter and all of this information not long after I'd been told that I was going to go missing overnight by one of the directors, if you remember me telling you.
I do.
So I was fuming and I was like so angry and I was like, how dare they? Now I remember the lady at payroll telling me that it would be deducted from my final salary, but if there wasn't enough there to take the full amount, they would be in touch to recover the remainder of the amount.
Right.
It didn't say it was going to go to another company or a debt collector. So I started to do that digging and that's, fast forward, that's where we are today.
Remind me, how long ago was that?
That was the 11th of June 2024. So it's nearly a year ago.
Nearly a year. Okay.
Mm.
So you started to do some digging as to who Act Management are. So what did that look like? Did you just literally just do the company house thing and all of that? What were you doing?
Yeah, so I went into company's house and then I thought, well, how can they have an arrangement with a hospital when I think for me, it was, I remember doing my yearly e-learning training. And as a midwife, you have to get your increment pay, you have to pass all of your training. So I'm then thinking, well, under GDPR e-learning, it says you cannot breach anybody's data. You can't even tell. It gives you scenarios. For instance, you're in the cafeteria and you hear members of staff over talking about a patient. They mention their name. What do you do about it? That's breach of data protection. You can't talk about someone unless you're being consented. So it was because it was that we knew it was such a fine. It can fine the hospital, it could fine you, and it was such a serious breach. I already knew how serious a breach of data protection and the data protection was. And during COVID, I remember a lady ringing up saying, I haven't heard from my daughter all day. Is she safe? Is she there? And I couldn't tell her anything. I was like, I'm sorry, under GDPR, I can't tell you anything. So when you look at it that way and you think, If I'm not allowed to tell someone about someone else, how can they tell a complete independent company about me? So I started looking at University Hospitals Plymouth. Then I started looking at Act Credit Management, and they are both on Companies House. Now, what's interesting, my work car, I haven't talked about this on any other podcast, so you get this bit. The work car contract is under Northumbria, Northumbria NHS Trust. So my data's gone there as well.
Right.
Not only that, NHS Fleet Solutions is a part of Northumbria Hospital, but it's a private company trading under Northumbria Hospitals, a car company. So I was like, how can they trade under a hospital? So I did data subject access to all of them, didn't hear a single thing. What I did get back was a solicitor's letter from NHS Fleet Solutions after I sent a notice to prosecute. But I thought I'll deal with that a bit later because this will probably turn into a 2 trust, 3 entity data breach in a minute,
Okay.
potentially 4, because the NHS hospitals, in my contract, it never said that Northumbria Hospital would ever have any of my data. So I'm then getting letters from Northumbria Hospital and I'm thinking, what is going on here? So to get myself clued up, I just went the easy route to the debt collector because the NHS have got money to waste. It's your public money. They waste it, well, not yours, but they waste it. You know what I mean? They waste people's money. So they can throw a barrister at me, but I want to be ready with this case law first to say, well, hold on a minute. That's the company you've reached to. And now they can't bring the defense and the paperwork to validate the debt or the alleged debt. So actually, it really does prove that your case is null and void. So that's the route I went down. And I think to start with, it was a bit messy. So I just had to shave off what I didn't need to do and just bring it into a little lane. Just focus on my hospital and focus on the debt collection agency. So what I did was I asked for the correspondence that how these two met, how they discussed me, what they said, what was agreed, what receipts did they have, and I never received it. So I prosecuted, which is under Article 15 I can do, and Article 82.
So simple
GDPR.
terms, you did a DSAR to them, they didn't respond, and then you put in a claim. And what was the claim? What does that look like? You went through small claims court. What was it?
Yeah. So small claims court, that's the Civil National Business Centre that they get us on.
Yeah,
That one,
Northampton. Yeah.
Northampton. So it went through the online. It was £205. But if you're not working, you get it for free with help for fees. So I did it through that avenue. I don't own my house. I don't have any savings. So in my eyes, I think, well, I've got nothing to lose. I might as well just go for it. So I put it through the online civil claim. And depending on the company, so I've learned this, British Gas removes theirs online and it goes to paper, but the debt collectors don't get to do that. They have to stay in the system. It's really odd, really, and the hospital's the same. So I'm
Say that
learning that these.
again. Say that again. They have to. So British Gas removed what online?
So my claim was no longer being dealt with online; it was all on paper.
Oh,
Same as the
right.
hospital, because I've got a claim against the hospital now. So I'm thinking, well, why do all the little debt collectors? Because the debt collectors are just little minions. But these bigger companies and corporations like British Gas, the council, and the university hospitals, and anything to do with government, they don't want it online. So they delay it longer for you. So it's all paperwork through the door and you've got to do it through the channels. Whereas British Gas has been in the court the same time as Act Credit Management pretty much, and it's not even got to the next stage yet.
Right.
So I'm like, they're just playing you and delaying those big corporations so you don't get anything against them.
Yeah.
So what I did was I went away and I started to look at the law that's going to support my claims. And we know that a lot of them are the Lynn Construction versus Peleus. We know that that's the legally executed deed of assignment, but it's also about having not sharing your data without your consent. So that was quite a simple one. And it's really simple. You've just got to attach the law with the case law and pair them up and say, that's my law, that's what I'm bringing to the courtroom. I kept it very simple. I didn't I've overcomplicated it with Jacobs now. I've got to work around that a little bit smarter.
Yeah. Okay. So you put in this claim, you got help with fees, so it didn't cost you anything. And how long ago was that?
Did I submit my claim? My bundle's downstairs. I've forgotten to bring it up. October. I made a very a very poor judgment. I submitted the claim on behalf of the CEO, not the company. But it wouldn't change the outcome because all the
Why
paperwork.
is that? Why is that a mistake? Because we're led to believe, obviously, we need to have a person in that room, right?
So let's remember that I'm the claimant, so I want to be the perfect litigant in person. So I'm adhering to all of their rules in their court to get the case law. So if I was the defendant, I wouldn't be using any of this. I'd be using the common law. I'd be using potentially my name as Victoria. So if the council took me to court, a bit like Mick did, I'd do that road. But in this instance, I'm doing the opposite in the matrix to learn it, to dismantle how it works, to understand it, so I can then step out of it and go, I understand it now. But I think a lot of people, I've been part of big groups. I've been part of the affidavit group, which I learned so much. You know, that group was great. I've learned how to write an affidavit. I've read Baron David Ward's affidavit. I get all of that. I understand, not fully, but I understand its process. But in this place, that's not going to work. You can't walk into a normal admiralty administration court and start handing over a Baron David Ward affidavit. It would be laughed at. So I had to play the system to get the case law against them, which is what I wanted. So the judge said I hadn't followed process, that to put it in the person's name, I had a claim struck out for Lowell for that reason. I couldn't get it through, so I'd already lost a claim, so I changed it to Act Credit Management, and it went through. So
Right.
I'd already been in Leeds Court in February and lost on a strikeout.
So it had to be the name of the corporation, not the name
Yes.
of the registered agent.
Yes, so we know that you can't sue a corporation or a building, you have to sue a person. So that will be my next step, but I want to master this bit and get into the understanding as a litigant in person and learning the court proceeding rules and making sure I just kind of know. But if the council took me to court, I'd have to learn a whole other way. So in this instance, I'm actually just playing them at the system's game.
Yeah. So had there been a CCJ against you at this point?
No, I had a CCJ against them.
You did it against them, right? Okay.
So you know when we're told don't engage, it's the
Yeah.
worst thing you can do. You have to engage because otherwise you've gone into a tacit agreement. A tacit agreement, you're agreeing to their terms in their letter if you stay silent. So to stay silent is actually, in my eyes, in my opinion, for me, was the worst thing for me to do. I wanted to be nosy and ask why. Why should I agree to these terms? So turn it back on them. Okay, I might agree to this, but only if you provide X, Y, and Z. So I think for me, ignoring wasn't the answer. And I knew that when I was doing the affidavit, it didn't feel right. There was something about that process. I thought, no, I've got to go over here. So I pulled myself away from that and then went into the matrix. That was clearly my calling, was
Yeah.
where I was being pulled to. Because I sit in my own space enough, I knew that was the right road. So, but I didn't really want to go in a courtroom. I knew I had to learn it for a reason. So when I finally got the CCJ against them, it was because they hadn't responded to the claim, a bit like us not replying to their
Yeah.
letters. So I had a CCJ sent to them for £5,205, which is the claim amount of five, and then the 205 is the claim amount. So you get that back. So when you start looking at it like that, you think, oh, I've got a CCJ against them now. However, under 13.3, they can ask for that judgment to be set aside if there is a strong possibility that their case has a reasonable success rate.
Is
And
that
that's what
CPR 13.3?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they asked for it to be set aside and then my claim struck out. So they were saying they had a positive chance of winning, it was successful, and that my claims needed striking out because I hadn't followed process.
And
So
your claim was because they basically breached data.
they breached my GDPR and Data Protection Act. They harassed me because they continued writing to me. They haven't since I've been to court. Since I put a court form in, they've not sent me a single thing. And I went for the clean hands doctrine, the Financial Conduct Authority. So I put those as the basis of my claim that they hadn't adhered to those rules and they hadn't given the legally executed deed of assignment. I didn't go deep in that. I just skimmed over it and went for the data breach and then harassment.
What did you say? King's hand doctrine?
Oh, the clean hands doctrine.
Clean hands, sorry.
Yes. So the
What's that?
equity that they haven't come to the courtroom in clean hands based on what they're presenting in their case. But
Okay.
what I learned, Mel, is they don't give a defence because they can't. So they delay. It's a tactic of delay all the time, a tactic this, a tactic that. Um, so I just focused on that in the hearing and just thought, well, where's the defence? Wasted our time.
So who turned up at the hearing?
So you go into a very small wooden room. There's obviously the crown on the wall. The judge is sitting up on his throne with his desk. He was lovely. I'm not going to lie. He was so warm. He wasn't. He didn't intimidate me. He was really nice, very pleasant, very respectful. Followed the law, followed process, and cut down what he didn't need to hear kindly. So when I went in, it was like a classroom setting. There were just two long tables with two chairs. So there was 8 chairs in total. Now, because I'm in a bill group down here in the southwest, I put a shout out, is anybody free to come to court with me tomorrow? And they said, we'll be there. They travelled 2 hours to me that morning. They were brilliant. They were at 7 o'clock in the morning having a cup of tea. That's when you realise the salt of the earth people are who holds this planet up,
Yeah.
seriously. And then all that was there was the defendant. So I had three of the guys behind me, and I was saying, remember, I'm in the matrix. I'm not out of it. So don't start arguing because I'll throw you out myself. So one of the guys was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I was like, so don't say anything. But what was really interesting when I got in there, it's the things like, what do you do when you get there? What do you say? How do you act? And there's no rule book for that. No one talks about that. And actually, you go in and you just sit at a load of chairs and you just wait to be called into the courtroom. And the clerk, the administrator, she just calls you over and checks you in and just take a seat, and just so you know, the defendant's over there if you wanted to talk. But obviously I didn't know what I was supposed to do and I didn't want to get anything wrong. So she asked to speak to me and she said, why are we here? And I just thought, oh, are you tricking me? My brain did a flip. Are you tricking me? Are you trying to set me up? But then I thought, it's not in a courtroom, so it doesn't. And I just said, we're here for a breach of GDPR. All right, okay. And that was it. So when we went in, she sat down, I sat down. And because she's bringing the argument of the CCJ, it's her turn to talk first, even though I'm the claimant.
Oh, I always thought it was the claimant first.
Well, my claim was set, the CCJ was issued because they didn't follow process. So that was my speech, really. I'm done. You haven't given a defence, there's a CCJ. It's that simple. That's the court proceeding rules. So because she was bringing an argument, she got to speak first. So she gave her spiel, but she was very unorganised, I have to say. I did feel quite sorry for her. And the guys even said, I felt really sorry for her. She just looked so burnt out. And she
Really?
looked like she'd been in it a long time. She looked tired. She was pulling, Your Honour, may I approach the bench? And why? I just need to know the page. Then she got the page number wrong, and yeah, and the judge was, and I just sat there very quietly and organised. I had everything organised in my head. The topics in like bunches of information, I would just have to draw on when I needed it. And I felt really sorry for her, because we're all burnt out. It doesn't matter whether you're asleep or awake, or we have to have some humanity in this.
Yeah.
And that was really hard to see her a bit like that. And I've got so much empathy. I just thought, I want to give her a hug. I thought I can't. And then she gave her arguments, 13.34 of the court proceeding rules to strike out, and obviously 3.4 and 13.3 to set aside the judgment. In all honesty, Mel, I wanted the judgment set aside so I can get the case law if I can. And I wanted it didn't want it struck out so I can go to trial. But it clearly isn't going to get there for that. And that's okay.
So what did happen then? So she was bumbling away through a badly put together defense. Um, when she'd finished, did you then have the opportunity to respond?
Yes. So she obviously had to bring her arguments. Now, her argument was that they didn't receive the claim form, the second claim form in Act Credit Management. So they defended the first one to Sally Hodgkins Lewis. When I discontinued it and told them I discontinued it, I then resubmitted a new claim form in Act Credit Management. And I just literally copied it. And then I continued with my bundle as it was because nothing's changed. But their argument was that I hadn't followed process by going back to the beginning and starting the letters and the notice of intention to
Right.
prosecute. But it was my argument there is I was always going to send it back to the same people.
Yeah.
So what a waste of time, money, and energy. I just don't have it, Your Honour. So she argued that, and they argued in their bundle, they produced 134 pages of absolute nonsense. It was just all my bundle, all their stuff. They just fill it up. And I thought, I'm not printing it because I'm not wasting my money. 50p a page, ridiculous. And they asked the judge to go to a certain page to see that their legal expert in their company at Act Credit Management had emailed the judge, the court, to say, we didn't receive the court form. Why is there a CCJ? And the judge took that as truth. It was there in black and white. So he thought, okay, they haven't received the claim form. We know that 1 million Royal Mail letters go missing a year. That could have been that 1 million claim form. So the way I was looking at it is he's going to put aside the CCJ for that because he's going to give them a chance to respond because that's only fair, which I agree with. And in actual fact, I want to see the data subject access. I want to see what they say about me. I want to know what they said to my employer, how they know each other and how they bid. Does someone sit in an office and go and find all the debt collectors? I want to know. So that was kind of that argument, really. And then they mentioned that in that part that I received my data subject access request, but it was returned by Royal Mail. Again, not going to be able to prove it. They, your judge said, I'm sure you'll be able to prove that information in your defence, and that they were using a wrong email address for me for a lengthy time, and all. It was all just stuff. I just thought it's got no substance. Then they moved on to that I hadn't followed the process again, and then literally she just went through, and that was pretty much their defence. There was nothing about that they didn't need the legally executed deed of assignment. There was nothing about harassment. They didn't touch upon any of it. It was that simple. 13.3, get rid of the judgment, and 3.4, get rid of the claim. So the judge then turned to me and said, Mrs. Rixon, I just would like to remind you this is not a hearing for merit. It's not a merit hearing. I'm not hearing your case today. The defendant has brought you here on the basis of the 2 strikeouts. Can you give your rationale of why that should or shouldn't happen? I basically just said, thank you, Your Honour. Litigant in person, as you know. He did confirm that at the beginning. And he just basically asked me, I just basically told him a very small background of why I was so distressed at my data being breached, which was because I was told I'd go missing overnight from the director at the hospital. I just gave him a brief background and I asked him to turn to exhibit. I think it was VR. I've got it in front of me. It's so annoying. VR5, I think it was page 27 of my contract. And I said, Your Honour, can I just ask you to look at that page? She's flicking through the bundle and on the laptop like this, and she's writing loads and loads of notes. And it was my variation of contract. And I said, between these pages, Your Honour, there is nowhere in here that gives any third party permission to have my data, which is, I didn't say this part, but that isn't normal in Lowell or a credit card with Barclays. They will always say if you default, then your information will be passed to a third party agent. We know that. But in this instance, that clause isn't even in the original documents. So that's why I'm probably a lot more up the ladder in a way that it is a straight data breach. So it's a straight data breach for everybody, by the way, but it's just easier for me to argue. So then I mentioned in there, and I went down to, I asked him to go to section 14 and 15, and I read out 2 paragraphs, and I read that out on my podcast. I just said that the money of the car will be deducted from my final net salary. It's there in black and white. It's not my problem if they didn't do that. They should be taking that up to their own means. That's nothing to do with me and Act Credit Management. So you've deliberately just passed on my data without even considering Wendy in accounts at Plymouth Hospital has written this herself. She's typed it up and I've signed it. But what's strange here is my contract is written and signed by Wendy at Plymouth Hospitals, but it's at NHS Fleet Solutions on the banner with University Hospital on the banner, but it's at Northumbria Hospital. This is what I've got to unpick next. So I don't think people understand this at work in the NHS where their data's going. That's quite a big bit I've got to deal with next, and I didn't bring that in this claim. And then I asked the judge the honour to go to page 70 of their bundle on the laptop. So I went to the laptop, I said, Your Honour, if you can see here on the 11th of May, Act Credit Management, the defendant emailed me at my NHS email address. Now, I'm not allowed to give out that email address willy-nilly. It's an NHS email. The only people that email me on that is internal and patients if they need to. Do you know what I mean? Those emails aren't just for your normal run-of-the-mill. They'd emailed me there, and then I said, if you look at page 71, you can see they've emailed me again in June. However, I left on the 7th of April. This is now May and June, Your Honour. And then if you now go down to the next two pages, Your Honour, you will see that the defendant has now emailed me at my private Gmail account and text me on my mobile
Yeah.
without any consent. So under Entrick versus Carrington, 1765, David Edelman given this bad boy, you have to have permission always. And common law consent is that you have to have permission to use someone's data under GDPR. It's all there. Wasn't difficult. So I pulled in a bit of the law into the stories I was saying. And then I explained that I sent a cease and desist because they didn't send me any of the information that I requested and they continued to ignore it. And then they turned it into a complaint. So I said, Your Honour, there was no complaint. It was a simple process that I was asking for my data. And then I read a little spiel that was, like a little prompt to say that I've come here today in clean hands, that they hadn't. They've concealed my data, which is a significant data breach. It violates my personal data and my dignity. And it's been a very distressing time. And I just wanted to put it to bed. I made a non-prejudice offer the day before and they declined within 10 minutes. So they made no attempts to try and settle the claim or the matter. Then he went back to the defendant. Did he? Yes, I think he did. And then he said he's going to make his judgment today. So then they do that, they start talking into their transcript. They're starting to transcript everything. And they bring in all the law that's the case law to make their decision. So I was really interested. Like, he knew and he had it all there, all the documents. He was looking at all the laws. It was brilliant. So he brought in all the laws, talked about the 2 points that the defendant was bringing, 13.3 and 3.4, incorporated all the case law, and then said, my decision today is that I am going to set aside, based on the fact that the Royal Mail could have not presented the claim form, which I was pleased with, really, because I want to go further. And then he stated that I had attended his court mail with intelligence and eloquence as a litigant in person, and he thanked me for having that respect. And he said, I will not be striking out your claims today, as this is not a merit hearing, Mrs. Rixon. I haven't heard your whole case. However, there isn't really a defence to cross-examine the exhibits. And he said that the defendant is ordered that they have to provide their defence in 14 days. And if they didn't, he would reissue and confirm that the CCJ would be reissued and awarded in my favour. So I was absolutely buzzing. What was really interesting was I had written up a draft order and it didn't feel right to put it in. I wanted to just do as minimal as possible so I didn't overcomplicate the situation. So the lady, actually, their defence brought a draft order, and at the last minute, she probably thought, it's the last thing I've got left. So she stood up to give a draft order. Your Honour, can I approach the bench? I've got a draft order. And he said, I'll write my own. So I could tell there was a little bit of, that she hadn't attended and wasted a bit of time. It would have been easier if it had been dealt with, impartially and in a non-prejudice way. And that was really it. So it was brilliant.
So basically, well done. And like you said, you've gone down, you're very much in the system, you're playing them with their own rules and regulations, which, a lot of people will be going, oh, God, no.
Yes, yes, they will be. Yeah.
But I get it, I get it in terms of what you were trying to achieve. And obviously it was really successful. So they've now, we're still in this 14-day of them having to put something in.
Well, I think we're at the point now, they will either make an offer and it's whether or not I agree that offer or just go to trial, which in this case, they haven't got their information, and the hospital have concealed theirs as well. So I've got all this evidence to take in a courtroom and say, Your Honour, I cannot verify how this company obtained my details. There's nothing to consent it, no permission. And that's the basis of the claim. It's that simple. So we'll see what they bring in 14 days. They might well bring a defence just to delay it and hope that I will pull out. But I think based on that case, that when I left, the three men that were with me said they'll definitely make you an offer.
Yeah.
And it's at that point, do I take the offer and then throw myself into the Lowell thing? I'm kind of like on the fence, and I'll just see what I feel like when it comes. Whatever will be is the divine timing.
Yeah. So that CCJ was around 5 grand, but the offer could be higher, obviously. And you would probably expect it to be higher as an incentive for you not to do any more. And so you'll feel into your gut at that point and think, right, what do I do? So,
And
but
CCJs, when you've got a CCJ against a company, you then submit to the High Court, and then they stamp it, and it is done properly and officially, and then they enforce the debt because they're bailiffs of the court. So it's very different if you're a company getting a CCJ to someone like me or you.
yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, yeah. If you remember Mick, he did a podcast recently, didn't he? He slapped the CCJ on Sainsbury's Bank CEO. It didn't last long, but at least he did it. Um, okay, cool. So let's watch this space then on that one. But you've also got, and yeah, I mean, super well done. You strike me, I was talking to Mick about this. You strike me as, because you said you really enjoyed being in the courtroom. You sort
Mm.
of thrived in that environment, and you've clearly very intelligent, and you're a lot more logical brained than I am. I knew that from the first time I met you. And so it's easier for you to
Yeah.
compartmentalize and sequence and all of that kind of thing, which is amazing. And like you said, maybe you missed your calling, but you need to be working on the right side, which you would anyway. But yeah, it's interesting to have that knowledge coming through in a sea of common law education, because every bit of information, every bit of education is valuable. And what's the saying? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And it's a bit like that, isn't it?
Yes.
Pulling out those nuggets and the GDPR stuff, because
Yes.
what I was thinking while you were talking, I've had so Severn Trent, um, they because of my fraudulent bankruptcy and all the rest of it, they closed my account, even though I wasn't paying and haven't paid for a long time. And then they tried to put me on a card thing, like for me to carry on, I had to pay by card or something, some weird card thing, which I ignored because I wasn't paying anyway. And then the next thing, I was starting to get bills through, or assumed bills because I didn't open them. It not in my name, in the name
Ah,
of in the name of my son, right? Yeah. So I then basically just kept sending them back, not knowing at this address. And then they never stopped. And then I basically sent a notice to say notice of possible fraud. So either somebody's, done this fraudulently, or somebody at Severn
yeah.
Trent has opened this account. And I'm not sure whether that's in error or whether that's fraudulent. So I had a letter which I looked at quickly this morning, basically saying because they were made aware of the bankruptcy, they then did a search on, yeah, yeah, yeah. So they've got his
They are criminals.
they've got his details from various searches they've done. I need to go back and reread it. So while I'm listening to GDPR
Yeah.
and data protection, and as soon as you read it, you're like, wow, this is wrong. This is wrong on every level.
Straight DSAR every time.
Yeah.
If everyone can get into a default, as soon as they get a letter, data subject access to everything. Everyone, Tesco, the garage that they've just filmed your face, do it all. Do it all. Start breaking down the system. And what's interesting, I haven't talked about this yet. I had a call yesterday. So apparently the ICO investigated Act Credit Management and found them that they hadn't done anything wrong, which I never received a copy of, but it was in their bundle.
What?
So if the ICO, and at the end of the court case, the judge said these words, that this was a serious violation of data protection and harassment. They're the words he used. So if that is the case, I now have a case against the ICO.
Yeah.
So I now need to do a data subject access to them. And in a minute, what I could do is take all of these four companies, so Act Credit Management, University Hospital Plymouth, University Northumbria, NHS Fleet Solutions, if they're separate, which I have to look up again, and the ICO. Rixon versus all these people because they've all shared my data without my consent. So it can get bigger and bigger.
So you put a complaint into the ICO and they came back, there was nothing wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've had a couple of things with the ICO with similar results.
Yes. So
Okay.
then you need to do a data subject access to them and see what they come back with. And you can specifically say, I want all the data. This list is not exhaustive. However, I specifically want, without delay, the discussion between you, Act Credit Management, and University Hospital Plymouth. So you go a section higher and you start trying to get that data.
The when you were talking about the trust and obviously the Plymouth University Hospital and then Northumbria Trust, two ends of the country.
Yes.
How does that work?
I need to work this through. So on the front of my car, lease, it's got a car on it, and in the corner it's got Plymouth Hospitals, and then it's got NHS Fleet Solutions. So when I open it, it looks like it's from my workplace. Then when I signed the order form and the variation contract, it's from Wendy in payroll at University Hospital Plymouth. But on the next page, it says NHS Fleet Solutions. It's so confusing. And then when I did the DSAR to NHS Fleet Solutions Managing Director, David Hanson, let's give you a shout out, David, whatever. They sent me a legal letter, which I will post. They sent me a solicitor's letter. And in there it said, we are representing our client, NHS Fleet Solutions, which is a branch under University Hospital Northumbria. And I'm thinking, where's Plymouth Hospital in all this? So there is quite a significant data breach. I was meant to be here learning this.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, you've gone from midwife whistleblower to NHS Trust whistleblower. Yeah.
But what I worry about more than anything is I don't want my children's data breached in schools. Is that what's happening in my children's schools? Is that what's happening with their photographs? It's really made me take a step back now and actually think about what's happening. Now, Pete Wilson at Check the Matrix has got, I mean, he's been absolutely fundamental in my bundle. He's been brilliant. He helped me put it all together and it really helped with some structure. He was talking about, he had someone on that if you go into Tesco and you ask, put your camera on, I would like a copy of my data from that video or the facial recognition on the screen, and they say no, it's a straight £1,000 fine. People are getting 600 quids up front for this. Because what they've got to do is they've got to pay someone to sit and go through all the images for 6 years, find your face, and then blank everybody else out and give you it. That's going to take months. But if you imagine 20 of us do that, they're going to get rid of the facial recognition. Very clever.
Yeah.
So the GDPR is our baby and we can use it against them. The only thing you have to be careful with Jacobs, and that's what Wayne has just taught me this morning, is although you've got GDPR and data protection, you have to be careful that under GDPR 15, the concealment of your data is not allowed because you're the data subject. They can't conceal your data. So they will use against you the Data Protection Act Section 2, that enforcers have a different role than a debt collection agency. So people need to be very wary of that part. And that's the bit I've now got to learn the other way, because debt collectors have a very different way of claiming money off you than enforcement agents. They're protected under the Taking Control of Goods Act. It's different. So you have to know that bit. So they're going to use probably the data protection section 2 against me, and I've now got to find through GDPR and other ways how I implode that part of their case.
Oh,
that
my
bit's a
goodness.
little bit more tricky. That's why utility bills are tricky. Not utilities, council tax particularly is much harder to fight. The difference that I'm fighting on is Jacobs have had cease and desist, vulnerable person, and they still ring and text me all the time. So they're ramping up. It's disproportionate. You cannot harass someone in a civil claim. So I'm in the claim in the court and they're still ringing me We know that under the court proceeding rules, if this ongoing civil, it has to stop. And they're not. They've actually cranked up their abuse, if I'm honest. Yeah, so I record he was that arrogant, this guy, Jake. I'd love to read his phone number out. He actually he actually said on the phone, I'm just gonna record this if you're okay with that. I just want to get your consent that I can record you. He was like, yeah, that's fine. Because I thought, well, if I'm arguing about being recorded, I should give you that back, even if you are a bit of a knob. And he said yes. And then he proceeded to be so arrogant. So I've recorded it and it will go to the court as an extra part of the evidence. So that's the difference. The debt collectors like Lowell, Act Credit Management, they've all stopped. I've had nothing from them. Jacobs and Marsden's and Bristow and Suter crank up because they use the schedule in the law, the Tribunals Act, that they have a right to enforce on a tax under an act and statute. They can enforce it, which they are right, they can, but they can't enforce it disproportionately. And that's the bit people have got to break down. And that's the next challenge for me.
Okay. And so obviously Wayne Layton, who successfully took Bristow and Suter, is building his level of knowledge in all of that. Okay, cool.
Yes. So we've chatted today and he's absolutely instrumental in just shaping a bit of my skeleton argument. So I can't go into this court with the court I've just been into. It will be different. And I must say, they won't let me go to the courtroom. It's all online.
Really?
Yes. So we'll see how that pans out.
Just on Wayne Layton, I told you earlier he's going to be coming on the podcast soon, which I'm super excited about. I also ended up on an online hearing recently, not my own. I was there as a witness for somebody else, and interesting because this guy was a master, so this was quite high level, which I think is Chancery, but I could be wrong. And he seemed very fair. There was a lot of us on
Mm.
witnessing, which they allowed.
Wow.
Um, and the guy, the barrister for the other side, it was Bank of Scotland. He was obviously trying to discredit our guy and this, that, and the other, and all of that. And he seemed okay, but he did seem a bit like a bumbling idiot as well at times. And to be fair to the master, he was as sort of harsh with him as he was with the other side.
Mm.
But he said, right, I'm going to take the next 5 minutes now to make my judgment. Well, it's like, well, whoa, whoa, whoa. How are you going to do that in 5 minutes? And then, needless to say, he came back in 5 minutes and ruled against our guy, and said that there was no merit in it. And he couldn't rule with whatever he was trying to do. But with all the stuff that he quoted, it seemed obvious on reflection that this guy, how could he have come up with all of that in 5 minutes?
Mm.
So either he's being fed that from the other side,
Mm.
um, or he'd already pre-prepared it through AI or whatever.
And they have your bundle long in advance. They have
Well,
every bit on you long in advance.
but this guy hadn't, so there'd been a new thing go in, and he hadn't seen it, and he still hadn't seen it by the time it finished. Um, so it just makes you a bit wary, especially when it's online. You just don't know what's going on when they switch their video off. Mm,
Yeah, I've got that. I did. The judge wasn't on there last time. It was his grey face. But you can always appeal because under the court proceeding rules, for you to examine exhibits, it has to be in person in a courtroom. I'm
interesting.
already one step ahead. I'm just
Okay.
I'm just letting it roll. I'm not putting any pressure on it. I was going to say actually, when you said about witnesses, if there is anybody that's watching this that has had Jacobs not give them a data subject access and has harassed them, would you be a witness for me on the 10th of June and come to court? It's only online. And you could actually stand as witness with me and say, yes, I don't know, Victoria, but this has happened to me and it is an ongoing issue. So I'm part of me is thinking with the Lowell, when I went to court for Lowell, I got struck out because I got the claim form wrong. That was the name of the CEO and not the corporation. And what was interesting in that case was the judge heard my case very fairly. She heard the defendant's case. She asked me after if I'd like to add anything before she made her judgment. And she said, unfortunately, Mrs. Rixon hasn't presented her case in the correct name, that means it's a strikeout. She didn't mention anything about the claims being struck out, which then I thought, well, she's not striking out the claims, just she mentioned about the name. So I then got the feeling that she was telling me your claims were fine. If you get the name right, you could bring it back. Now, what she did say to me was so fundamental, and my friend was with me, and he's a whistleblowing pilot for the chemtrails. And she said, would you like to ask me anything, Mrs. Rixon? I said, please may you ask the defendant if they have a copy of the legally executed deed of assignment. And she said, do you have a copy? And they went, we're not at liberty to provide that. So I thought, so she's just struck out my claims for this. She hasn't struck out the GDPR and mentioned it. And she's now asked for that and they don't have it. Oh, I'll just resubmit it to the company. But I did do due process and I thought I'll waste a bit of time. They also got a cost order on me and never came for it. 300 quid. So they didn't even touch the cost order because they wouldn't dare because they know they're in the wrong. And they know that they can't keep continuing to contact me because they haven't got consent. Now they can keep emailing and texting because they can just say it's a computer system, but they cannot write you a letter and they cannot send it through your door. That's different. So this is why you should keep everything in synced order, chronological order. And I actually went back to the beginning with Lowell and said, right, I'll give you another chance. Give me this, 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 and this. And they didn't. So I sent a notice of intention to prosecute, and now they've got a new claim form against them. So we go back to the start.
Wow. Well, you've certainly got some tenacity, my love.
Yes. And on that case, I did have a witness, and my friend with Lowell, she did the same thing, and we were witnesses for each other. That's what's needed. We've got to come together and get a group of Lowell, a group of Jacobs, a group of this, issue witnesses. They're key as well. So we
Yeah.
need to bring these people into these cases if they're local. That would be brilliant. So, yeah.
Well, just on that DSAR again, again, I've received a letter through a solicitor who are acting on behalf of their client, Barclays Bank, because I put in a DSAR for all the information that Barclays Bank have got because I submitted a promissory note to Barclays Bank. And when I got the DSAR back, it was nothing to do with what I'd asked for. It was some very, very old Barclay card stuff from 20 odd years ago or whatever. And I'd put in two DSARs and then I'd put in a complaint. And I spoke to somebody at the bank the other day and they said you'll have to put it through as an appeal. And anyway, this letter I've had from the solicitor basically says that Barclays are now their client and they are not obliged to send me any information.
Well, firstly, but the solicitor can obviously have your address because they're regulated by the solicitors, the SAR, SRA, whatever the solicitors
SRA, yeah.
regulation authority. Yeah, but that they cannot conceal your data under Article 15. If they have your data, they have to give you their data. You have to have your data. You own it. You are the subject. So under Article 82 of the GDPR, you can then claim compensation, and there's case law to support that. And it doesn't even have to be distressing. It can simply be, you concealed my data, now give me some compensation.
Mm,
So I'll
okay.
help you with whatever you need. Anything you need. We'll get together on Zoom with a glass of Blanc and type something out to the CEOs.
Sounds good. So, so just to let the viewers know, so that was Act Credit Management, where you had your little win, and that's still ongoing, and let's see what happens. You've got Jacobs on the 10th of June. You're going back to Laos. You've also got British Gas, your University Hospital Plymouth, and BW Legal. So, ladies and gents, this lady ain't letting anything go. She's going for it all. And I can just imagine your knowledge is just from where you were a few months ago to where you are now. And obviously you've got some amazing people helping you. Like, and I've had amazing people help me. And sometimes it gets so overwhelming because there's different ways to skin the cat. There's different procedures, there's different legislations. Do you do what you're doing, or do you do the common law route, or do you, and sometimes it's so overwhelming. What would you say to anybody that's sort of listening, going, oh my God, this is amazing. I want to do what Victoria's doing, blah, 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 blah. But obviously we know that there's different ways you can do things. What would you say if anybody's like sitting on the fence with it all at the moment?
Find your way.
Mm,
So many people were like, don't ignore, do an affidavit, do this. And the other people were like, do this, do this, do this. And when it got too much, I felt bogged down. I just sat in my own space and thought, right, what do I want to do? Where do I feel that in myself that is the right road? And everything said, do the affidavit because it's out of the system and I don't want to be in it. But at the same time, I thought I can't get out of it until I obliterate it because I don't want these people to ever message me again. There's not actually that many debt collectors. If you eventually they will never, if you take every single one of them to court because they've had your data, they will never ever touch you. So there won't be any debt collectors to be able to come near you. You'll
Yeah.
have to make new companies all the time. So that's really the skill. And to be honest, I put the claim form in and I give it no energy. I let it roll over there in their bloody matrix, and I just get on in my bubble. And when I go, oh, got to write my bundle. I'll crack on and do that next week. I make it fun. I don't put pressure on it. And just remember that the journey that you take is right for you. So if you do the court side, that's great. If you don't, that's also great. But it's the big thing around shame. Admitting you have debt for a lot of people is shame and embarrassment. You're not, it's not. It's not. I'm actually not in that much debt. I mean, Jacobs, you're not going to believe how much do you think Jacobs are enforcing against me?
Oh God, I have no idea. 300 quid?
300 quid.
Oh God,
You know, there's
that was a
people with
lucky
7 grand
guess.
of council tax. And I'm like, it's 300 quid. It's ridiculous.
What's
But
it
I won't
for?
let it go. Hmm?
What's it for?
Council tax.
Council tax.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, well, hold on a minute. And then they British Gas, I wrote to them about a complaint of their smart meters because I got diabetes 19 months after my smart meters went in, and my pancreas slowly died with my blood results. It was dying. So I asked them to remove it, and I sent them 5 pages of smart meter radiation evidence and said, look, if you don't remove it, I'll do it. I gave them notice when they were coming. I gave them the date that the guy was coming to remove them. And I've left their smart meters in my bottom of my garden so they can come and get them when they're ready. Guess what? I've not been on insulin for another 5 months again. So is my pancreas been battered by the radiation? Who knows? We know that they're not great. So because I was in that argument with them, they sent my data to BW Legal for £312 for the quarter. And BW Legal tried to enforce the debt. Now, because I turned on them very quickly, and I take this note from Mick's talk with Richard, he said, I've made so many mistakes, now I know what I'm doing. And that is the truth. You will make so many mistakes. It's only when you make those do you then get smarter, quicker, more logical. You give nothing the energy it doesn't need. And that's all I did. So BW Legal, when I sent them the DSAR and the intention to prosecute, they freaked out, gave everything back to British Gas. And British Gas have never contacted me since last August.
Oh, really?
Nothing. Nope. Nothing. Not a single bill. They've not updated it on my credit file. Nothing.
Wow. Wow.
There is hope.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I was telling you off air about something that we're bubbling away with in the background. And like you said, there are so many good people. And I can't remember whether it was, yeah, you were part of this conversation and other people were saying the same thing. It's like sorting the wheat from the chaff, isn't it? There's been a lot of people in this movement for whatever you want to call it. And we've discovered that some of them are not that honest. They lack integrity. They're maybe controlled opposition. They've maybe been shoved in there to ruffle some feathers or try and screw things over. And because we're now 5 years on, 4, 5 years on, what's left are the knackered people that are still, the true, authentic, people with integrity that are here to create good for everybody. And that's not being on our soapbox and saying, look at me, how wonderful. It's wanting this for ourselves, our kids, our friends, our
Yes.
family. And that's what's happening. And so there's these wonderful organizations popping up all over this country, all over the world. But people that are just trying to take back their control, create their own councils, create their own courts, step outside of the system, use it as and when if you have to, but not be affected by it because you've got your own stuff going on over here. And we're allowed to do that, by the way. We don't have to wait for two-tier twat to tell us what to do anymore. Nobody's got any respect for that man, and he will be taken down at some point, I'm sure. I don't mean in an aggressive way. I mean in a he'll be gone because he's so unpopular. But people still think that the government control us or we have to do what they say. No, that's not true. That is
No.
not true. And you doing what you're doing, me, Mick, all these other great people that are doing what they're doing is slowly but surely having that ripple that's going further and further, and it's impacting more people, and more people are going, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to pay my council tax either, and before we know it, that tipping point will come and it will crumble, won't it?
Yeah,
It has to.
absolutely.
It has
Absolutely.
to.
And I think that they're putting the pressure on now because they know that they're getting to their edge and they're pushing it. But all I can say is the judge wasn't corrupt that day. So we all have to be careful with our language. We say they're all corrupt. And like people say, you've really attacked the midwives. And I'm like, well, if you're offended by that, you need to go and find out why you're offended and you don't know me. Because I'm
Mm.
not offended that you don't agree with me. I'm okay with that. So it's this whole like just be mindful that not every midwife goes to work to cause harm. Not every judge goes to work to ruin people's lives. Not every police officer goes to work and realizes what they're doing. It is literally and I've thought about this a lot. People said, "What took you so long to come out?" Well, if you look at all my documentation, it goes right back to 2020. I was in the system trying to do all this work in there. Didn't know what a lot of it would transpire to be as amazing as it is now. I was just meant to do it. And I just think let people come when they're ready. Let them all come. If they all woke up now, we'd have a huge problem.
Yeah.
We would have a huge problem. So the masses wait when they're meant to, and let the people ignore their council tax if they want to, and let them go to court if they want to. That's the space I'm in, and if people want to learn, I'm more than happy to. So I'm thinking about now doing like a Zoom and bringing up the data subject access request and actually saying, right, you've got it up now. Type this on your own laptop. Write it out now as we're on the phone. Get it in the envelope. Get it sent off and just take that one step to just post that letter.
Yeah.
When you don't get it back, you'll then go, well, they haven't given it to me. And the control turns to that feeling of, well, I've done what I know is right and they haven't given it to me. And it does help ease your fear. Definitely.
Yeah. That's right. I know how I felt 12 months ago to how I feel now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was still nervous when I went into court the other day. Um, and she seemed fair enough. Um, but she was well and truly in the matrix, and it didn't matter what I said, what laws I quoted. The fact that the previous case had been basically his opinion, it
Mm.
wasn't based on law or fact. But that didn't matter. That didn't matter. A bit like the ICO, right? Who didn't find anything wrong. So, yeah, I think that's a great idea because a lot of people are looking for that tangible help. And if you're thinking about running something like that and actually encouraging people, right, on this call, we're doing this DSAR.
Now, get it printed off in
Exactly.
the library. Keep your receipt. Keep all your printed payments. You can claim it back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great idea. Are you doing any more talks coming up?
Yes, I was in Wendover last night. I'm a bit tired today. Where am I? I'm in Burnley next Thursday.
Burnley.
In Burnley. And then I'm doing the WTF weekend.
Yes. In
I'm doing that.
August.
Yes, I've been asked to do that.
Right, okay.
Very honoured.
Okay, excellent. So, Joy Warren, who heads up the Fluoride Free Alliance,
Yes.
don't know if you've met her yet, but so
Heard
I'm
of her.
I'm helping her with her marketing and stuff at the moment. And she's definitely at that event, and she's been sending me some stuff, and I've got a feeling she's going to say, "And Mel, are you going to come along?" So
Ah,
yeah, so we might
I'm
get there.
bringing all the family. We're all going together,
Oh,
which
nice. Yeah.
yeah. And then I've been asked to do another 4 day or 3 day event in August in Weston. To be honest, I've had three calls today about talks. It's lovely because I've got two dimensions of this now, and I'm just spreading myself out, and I'm starting to recover now. I feel like I'm able to find my life again, and I'm
Mm.
not so teary, and I'm not so devastated about losing midwifery because actually it was the demise of me was the rise of me, as I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and the knowledge that you're sharing and like I've shared that podcast that you did with lots of different people, pregnant ladies. Just please have a watch, have a listen, before you make your minds up what you're going to do. And at the end of the day, everybody's on their own journey, but what you're sharing and your personal experiences, and I know that you weren't able to share everything on the podcast, but it was enough to make people go, whoa.
Yeah,
And I remember my experience in hospital, which was a long time ago, which wasn't pleasant either. So, and I didn't know any better. So the more of that gets out there, um, the better, obviously, bring back home births. That's where it should all be anyway. Fuck the bloody hospital wards.
absolutely. Do not eradicate normalized birth. If you do, we are in a very, very bad situation.
Yeah,
Very bad.
absolutely. Do you know what? I don't know if you've seen my last one that went up. It was a lovely lady that does a lot of plant medicine, and she's got an 18-month old. She's originally from the Netherlands, and she was living in Cyprus when she got pregnant. And when they went to the hospital there to talk about wanting home births, etc., you can't have it in Cyprus at all. How they would monitor that, I don't know, but not allowed. And actually, how they help deliver the baby is getting the elbow onto the mother's stomach to help push it out.
Yes, they do that in a lot of countries, and that is so dangerous.
Wow. So, needless to say, she
A
went back.
lot of women have died from that, an eruption. You're forcing, there's so much blood in there as well. You've got to be so careful. Doulas in the UK and birth keepers like Nikita, hands off, hands off. You've got to be hands off, but you've got to know how to navigate through these other situations. And it's midwifery and birth is so messed up right now. Nobody has an answer. I don't have an answer. The only thing I can say is go within and you'll know your answer for you and your baby.
Yeah,
That's where it starts.
yeah,
Stop looking out there.
yeah. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And obviously, I'm going to have you on again when you've wrestled Jacobs to the ground and
A little bit harder, but I'll give it a good shot.
see what happens. Any final words before we finish?
Yeah, it's just we're in a real feminine energy now. We're really coming out women, and I think when you bring out your feminine energy, your the masculine energy in your life will follow around you. So if you've got men and children around you, they'll start coming. And we know that these younger children are really having a mass awakening. So it's the knowledge that will give you the power, but it's actually just stepping over that threshold with something new that you've never done. Read up on a DSAR, read up on GDPR. That's it. And
Yeah,
that's how we start rolling this ball.
yeah, absolutely. Knowledge is power. And that's what gives you confidence. That's what I've realized. Okay, well, thank you again, my love. I will let you go and wishing you all the best for what's coming in the next few weeks for you. And hopefully, I might get to meet you in person in August.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Thank you.